Yeah, if you see the killer, the first thing you want to do is run. Remember, avoid the knife, keep your life. Go Devils! Welcome to Dodo's Horror Nest. Today we're talking about Totally Killer that came out this year, 2023. It's a horror comedy that caught me by surprise, but this is the Gore versus the Boar, so let's see what was good about it and more importantly, what was bad about it. I do go over the whole movie from start to finish, so if you haven't seen it, I would suggest you watch the movie first and then come back and check this video out. Or if you don't care about spoilers at all, then just stay here and let's have some fun. The movie starts with a podcaster who's recapping the murders that happened in 1997. Three young girls were killed, and each of them were stabbed 16 times, making this killer known as the Sweet 16 Killer. Being murdered and stabbed 16 times would be enough for me, but getting killed by this thing would just be embarrassing. The podcaster is doing a mini tour, taking a bunch of people dressed up as the killer, and they're going to like little checkpoints of where the murders happened back then. We meet the main girl, Jamie. She's going to a concert, but her mom, since she was friends with the people that got murdered in 1987, she's a little bit overprotective, as Jamie now is that age herself. She wants to go to a concert, but her mom tells her that the only way she's going is if her dad takes her and stays outside the concert the whole time until she comes out. Her dad is played by this guy, and he's dressed up as Zac Efron for Halloween. This leaves her mom alone at the house and very vulnerable. Jamie sits in the back of the car with her dad driving, and this makes him feel like an Uber driver. I do like this scene because it sets the tone of the movie, how it's going to have the comedy mixed in with the horror. So this will get the first gore point. Since it's Halloween, the mom's giving out candy to trick-or-treaters. One of the persons that comes knocking is a guy dressed in that same outfit as the killer had back in 87. She recognizes this, but she braves it up and she says, okay, this is just a costume, it'll be okay. But when she opens the door, she actually gets attacked by the guy. We get a really cool fight scene because the mom has taken tons of self-defense classes, so they do a really nice choreographed fight here. She's a badass and she's actually putting up a really good fight. And then we get a cool scene where she fights off the guy and he goes out the front door and she's staring at the front door waiting for him to come back. And in the meantime, I guess he runs all the way around the house, but in one shot scene, she's just standing there and she kind of turns around and then we see him come in through the back door and attacks her again. This gives him the upper hand and he ends up stabbing her 16 times to be exact, making her our first murder of the night. After this, we see that Jamie has come back from her concert and she's in her room crying, and then we see the podcaster outside recording for his podcast. At school the next day, the staff is talking about self-defense. This is where we get the coach saying that funny line with avoid the knife, keep your life scene. She goes to an amusement park where they're going to have a science fair. While she's walking there, she runs into one of the staff members there that's like a cleaning guy. When he turns around and just gives her this look, kind of like implying like, okay, this might be a suspect. And it feels like a very forced red herring here, and we get a lot of this throughout the movie. We find out though that her friend is actually working on a time machine. Her mom had started doing this when she was young, and she's just continuing, and the reason why they hadn't finished it is because they needed a cell phone and Wi-Fi for it to work. The friend has the date set to when the killer first killed it back in 1987, and she tells Jamie that she wants to send her there so she can stop the murders, which would then save her mom in the present time. I'm gonna give this a bore point because why not just go back a day ago and save her mom then, stop the killer, and then everything's fine. Or the movie could have explained it better, maybe like in a way of saying like, hey, we can save your mom but also save the three girls that got murdered 40 years ago. But they don't. They just kind of make it seem like they just want to focus on saving the mom, but they could have just gone to yesterday and done that. Her dad tells her that the mom and the podcaster were friends, but they didn't speak about it because they were secretly trying to solve the murders themselves, trying to see who the killer was. And he tells her a story about this amusement park and how they found out that they were pregnant with her in a ride called the Quantum Drop. This will be important later in the story. She goes to the amusement park to meet her friend once again, and this time the killer comes out and starts attacking her. She runs and she hides in the time machine that's actually a photo booth. And while she's there, the killer finds out and he goes in there and he tries to stab her, but he stabs the machine instead. And it starts the machine, sending her back to 1987. I like the movie's shift that goes into the 80s. It gives us a good look at how the time was back then. And it shows how a lot of people from back then would be considered problematic nowadays. We see a mom that she runs into and she tells her that why isn't she in school and that she can give her a ride. While she's riding with her, she has her little kids in the back and she's just smoking cigarettes with the windows up, and she comes out and she's basically hotboxing the car with the kids inside. She gets to school and she's trying to come up with a plan on how to tell them, like, okay, I'm an exchange student, I need to come here, and all these stories in her head. And whenever she goes up there, the person just asks her what's her name and gives her a schedule. And then she's like, that's it? That easy? And then the lady in the office, she's just like, this isn't Fort Knox. And he shows you just how carefree they were back then. Her first class is actually gym, so she goes there and then she sees the 3 girls that are supposed to be murdered later this week. They're about to play every high school teacher's favorite game, which is dodgeball. But Jamie didn't practice dodging the wrenches, so she gets hit a bunch of times and she gets eliminated. When she looks up, the person that eliminated her is actually the young version of her mom. And then she realizes that she's actually kind of an asshole. And even one of the girls tells her that she's actually the devil. The mom is actually the leader of this group called the Mollies, which is her and then the 3 girls that get murdered. She tries to talk to them, but they don't want nothing to do with her. We meet Jim from the office, and he's funny for no reason. His first line in the whole movie is, old people, sick people, people with dogs. And all he's doing is ranking the people he hates the most. Jamie tries to tell them about the murders that will happen, but they don't believe her. She keeps trying using Back to the Future references, but Jim from the office doesn't tolerate shenanigans. She remembers that her bestie's mom was the one that started making the time machine, so she goes to school to try to find her. She does find her, and she explains everything to her, and luckily for her and the plot of the movie, she believes her. She does tell her that she knows about her secret notebook that nobody else knows about, and that's how she believes her. To prove that she's from the future, she uses her cell phone as something to show her. Whenever the bestie's mom sees the phone, she actually thinks that that's the time machine. She explains how time travel works in this movie, and she tells her that it's like a river that keeps flowing, so in the future, without her, it's still going on. We see that, and it's her dad freaking out because she's gone missing. Her bestie from the present tells him that she's gone back in time, but of course nobody believes her, and the podcaster is standing by listening to all this. It's the night of the first murder, and she's trying to stop it by going to the party where it's going to take place. She takes her bestie's mom along, and when they get there, there's a jock there who's not letting them in, as well as this other guy that's standing there trying to get into the party, but they're not letting him because they keep calling him a nerd. Jamie tells him if they could help her get into the party, and he says that he knows a way. They go to the backyard, and his plan is basically to go over the fence. Once in the party, she sees her young dad coming out of the swimming pool, and then he goes straight to make out with Tiffany, the girl that's supposed to be murdered today. She tries to approach the girls, but they tell the jock to kick her out once more. And then she comes back inside again, and this time she uses her self-defense to beat up the jock, and all the girls are impressed. She continues to look for Tiffany, and she asks her young dad, but he hasn't seen her, and she's actually in another room making out with another guy. She's in her parents' bedroom making out with this guy. He says something about a blowjob, and she says that she does not do blowjobs. She goes into the bathroom to change. He double thinks it, and he's like, oh, you don't do blowjobs? Then never mind, I'm out of here. And he just leaves. Whenever she comes back out, she sees that he's gone. Out of the closet comes out a guy dressed in the killer outfit. But obviously it's the first time it's happened, so nobody knows that he's a killer. She thinks it's the guy, and he slowly approaches her. And when he gets really close, he just starts stabbing her 16 times to be exact. Later in the movie, they reference this back with a funny joke where a guy says, if you think about it, if she did do blowjobs, she would still be alive. And then Jamie's like, let's not make that the lesson here. But Jamie was actually looking for her in the garage because that's where she originally got killed. So she's already altering the events. Whenever she realizes this, she runs to the parents' bedroom and they just find her body in the bed and the killer is gone. The police try to question Jamie because the murders only started happening after she showed up and she's been talking about murders the whole time. But her young mom steps in and tells them that no, she was actually trying to prevent it. I saw her and they stick up for her. But her young mom is still questioning things, and Jamie just comes up with the conclusion to tell her that she's actually a psychic. She pulls out a little crystal that her mom in the present time have given her and tells her, like, look, with this crystal I can see the future. And then the young mom is like, how far can you see? And she's like, all the way to 2023, which is kind of like a funny truth. Unfortunately though, she does tell her young mom that she's supposed to end up with Blake, who's her dad, but not until years later. But whenever she tells her this, the young mom gets excited because she thinks that Blake is hot. And since her friend Tiffany is now dead, then he's up for grabs, which, I mean, great friends, right? I like how they use the time travel in this movie because then we go back to the present time and the podcaster realizes that he's done the reports on this murder and he knows everything about it, and everything that he has written was that she had died in the garage. But now whenever they look at the news and everything, it turns out that it was in the bedroom. So they're really confused, and this is where the podcaster believes the bestie that she actually did go back in time. They go through some photos that they found that was from the party, and they see Jamie standing there, and this confirms that she is in fact in 1987. Back in 87, and Jamie sees that her parents are now making out with each other all over the place, and she's worried since they got back together so early that they might break up and they might never have her, making her disappear. Her bestie's mom, however, confirms to her that no, that's not how time travel works in this movie. In this movie, if they never have kids, you would still exist. You would just have no home to go back to. Also, a gore point for this guy because he's the jock that was kicking her out of the party. And after that, every scene that we get from him is just comedy gold. I don't know why, but everything he says just makes me laugh. Jamie, now being part of the group, finds out about a girl that died a year ago. Her name was Fat Trish. Well, they called her Fat Trish. And this will be important later on. Jamie's trying everything in her power to keep them away from a cabin, as that's where the next murder is going to happen. One of the girls says, "It's my birthday, so I do want a party, but we don't have to go to a cabin. We can go to my parents' condo." Jamie says, "Okay, that's perfect. A condo in the city, that's going to be safe." She falls asleep on the ride, and whenever they make it there, it is a cabin, but the girl was so dumb that she thought that was a condo. The guys come as well, making it a full-on party and a perfect place for a killer to arrive. She keeps warning them, and they're not taking her seriously, and they're kind of booing her, and at one point they even kick her out of the party, leaving her outside in the woods. I don't like this part because they make her mom look really dumb here. I mean, obviously she's young, but she's all over this guy, and she knows about the murders. She believes that she's a psychic and that she can predict these things. But still, she just kind of forgets all about that just to be with the guy. Jamie's outside and she realizes that she had locked all the windows. And whenever she looks up, there's one window that's open, leading her to believe that the killer is already inside. She climbs up to one of the windows and we get a funny scene where she's knocking on the window and a girl turns around, and obviously they all have been smoking weed, so they're all very high. She knocks on the window and she's like, "There's somebody inside the house." And then she turns over to Jamie and she's like, "I'm inside the house." And then we see her young mom and her dad, and they're making homemade pizzas with regular bread and ketchup and like apple slices. She cuts her hand open by accident, and then they go to a room to start making out. And it's another kind of funny scene where they're like making out in the bed, but she's holding her hand up the whole time. While they're doing this, she realizes that she's not paying attention to Jamie, and everything that she's been saying so far has been true. So she goes to warn all her friends that there is a killer. We finally see the killer inside the house, and he's attacking one of the girls that was sleeping by herself. She tries to run away from her, but he pushes her over an edge, and she falls over down the stairs in a pretty gnarly fall. He catches up to her, and he stabs her 16 times to be exact. The young dad sees him and attacks him, and then he gets stabbed in the chest one time, and then Jamie finally breaks into the house and she starts helping them, as well as the young mom. He hits the young mom, knocking her down, and they think that she's been stabbed. After being attacked by a lot of people, the killer runs away, and they go back to check on the people, and the mom's fine, but the other girl is dead. In the regular timeline, it was the other friend that was supposed to die, not this one. So it's already altering everything, making it unpredictable for her to see what's gonna happen next. We get a funny scene where Jamie has a napkin full of the killer's blood. She takes it to the police officer, Jim, from the office, and he's like, "What is this?" And she's like, "It's his DNA." And he's like, "What is that?" And she's trying to explain to him, and they're just making fun of her, and he just like throws a napkin on the floor, and he's like, "All right, let's take this thing seriously." And it's kind of funny how they didn't have that back then. Somebody time traveling would make that mistake. During a newscast at the school, they're standing by the van, and they realize that her phone went off. Whenever she checks it, she sees that the van actually has given her some kind of signal on the phone. That's what they need to get the time machine going. So tonight they're gonna go to the carnival, and the newscast is actually gonna be there, making it a perfect time for her to travel back to her own time. What I don't like about this scene is that her phone's at 33%. They obviously need the phone for the time machine to work, but instead of turning it off and turning it on when they need it, she's had it on this whole time. They're using it as like a time crunch element for the movie that's not necessary. We briefly see the nerdy guy that helped them sneak into the party earlier, but just for like 30 seconds. Jamie and her bestie's mom are realizing that they need something powerful to get the time machine going, and they see the quantum drop and say that has enough power to get the job done. While the bestie's mom is going to be working on that, Jamie gathers the troops and they're going to fight the killer one last time inside of the amusement park. They decide to use the third girl as bait inside of this horror house, and they're gonna have the killer follow her in there, and they're all gonna be waiting inside for him to attack him and finally kill this guy. She goes in there, and we get many jump scares from the horror house itself. And as she's walking around, you see that her friends are all set up in different stages, kind of being mannequins or props that the killer won't see. The killer does enter, and he doesn't see them, and he keeps walking, going after her. Once they make it to the bathroom, Jamie accidentally drops something, and the killer attacks her, and then everybody comes in, and they all start trying to fight this guy. He's fighting them off very well until finally Jamie stabs him in the back. And whenever he turns around and he's about to get the upper hand on her, another friend from earlier comes in with a big old scythe, and she just stabs him in the back. He drops to the ground, obviously dead. And whenever they take the mask off, it's like a super underwhelming twist because it's the nerdy guy that helped them into the party that you didn't see that much, but in 2 scenes. They gave it a backstory by saying that he was Fat Trish's boyfriend at the time when she died. And what had happened was Fat Trish was invited to a sleepover with these girls. They got her drunk so that she could confess some things to her. And after she didn't want to, she drove away drunk and she got into an accident and died. So Jamie stands up and she starts calling all of them killers because they killed this girl. They got her drunk and let her drive home, causing her death. She's accusing her mom and the other girls of doing this. But then her mom tells her, like, it wasn't me. I wasn't there that night. I would not have let her drive. While this is going on, the third friend that's still alive, she's standing by a doorway, and out of the doorway comes out another killer who slices her throat. This time it's the guy from the present. And he begins to chase them all, and they all run away. Jamie makes it to the quantum drop and goes inside. Her friend tells her that she needs to hurry up and hit the button. But before she can, the killer goes in there as well and begins attacking her. And then her mom also shows up there. She helps Jamie a little bit, and then the ride starts. So they all get pushed to the back. It's that ride that spins really fast. So you're just kind of stuck against the wall. And then we get like a cheesy scene with the mom where Jamie asks her, why are you here? And she tells her like, something told me that I was supposed to be in this ride with you. And Jamie tells her like, oh, we were here before, because obviously it's her mom. And she rode that ride when she was pregnant back then. That was the story that her dad told her. She obviously doesn't tell her that she's her mom, but she just tells her that they've been here before. In another cool scene, we see the killer, and he's like standing up, and he stands up vertically, well, I guess horizontally against the ride, and starts walking. And he starts walking towards the mom, stabbing her one time. While this is happening, Jamie makes it to the middle, and she manages to open the door. When the door opens, her mom actually goes flying, which surprisingly that she survived this. Even though they don't confirm it, but we'll see later. And the mask of the guy actually goes flying as well. She then closes the door, and whenever he turns around, it's the podcaster. It's again another underwhelming twist because it was kind of predictable and they could have done something better than this, honestly. They fight some more, and before the ride can take off 100%, they both need to be in the middle because it's going to be so fast that it's going to kill them. So she's in the middle and he's making his way to her. And whenever he makes it there, they start fighting. He tries to stab her a few times. She manages to grab the knife. She stabs him in the arm one time. And then whenever he grabs the knife, he tells her like, now I have the weapon. Whenever she looks down, there's an Ex Machina thing because she grabs a nail gun that was seen briefly in the beginning of the movie. And she shoots him with the nail gun, causing him to move backwards into the ride. You just see him disintegrate into pink mist. Whenever the ride stops, she goes out. She sees that the amusement park is abandoned. This is a good sign, so she runs home and she sees her parents back together again in the present time. Her bestie and her mom arrive there to greet her and tell her everything that has changed. They have waited almost 40 years to see if she survived or not. And at the end, we see the bestie's mom and Jamie sitting down, and she's telling her like that she's wrote a book for her about everything that has changed. And then we see another older guy walk by, and she's like, who's that? And she's like, oh yeah. She's like, I forgot to tell you. Since your parents got together earlier than before, now you have an older brother. His name is Jamie. She's like, wait, both of us are Jamie? And then her mom comes out and she's like, Colette, honey, can you help with the table? So they completely have changed everything, and it's a pretty funny way to end the movie. That's the end of Totally Killer, so let's see how many points it's going to get. The movie ends with 13 gore points versus 6 bore points, giving us a total of +7. It makes sense. It's a good movie. It's a really good mix of horror and comedy. And if you like movies like The Final Girls or Happy Death Day and things like that, you're really going to enjoy this one. Share your horror passion with us by subscribing, liking, and commenting on the video. And if you don't want to miss the next videos, make sure to hit that bell so you get notified when we drop the next video. And as always, let me know what you think.